what these pilots detected was well outside the normal flying envelope of an airplane.
It started on a cold November evening in 1989. Over the quiet town of Eupen, near the German border, two police officers on patrol suddenly stopped their car. Above the treetops, hovering silently, was a massive triangular craft, flat, black, outlined with bright lights at each corner. It moved slowly, deliberately, without making a sound. The air was crisp, the sky unusually clear, and yet what they saw didn't belong to any known aircraft. As they followed the object, it drifted over fields and rooftops, seemingly aware of their presence but never accelerating, just gliding with an eerie calm that defied everything they understood about flight. One officer later described the moment as surreal, like watching science fiction unfold in real life. Within hours, dozens of similar sightings flooded in triangular shapes, strange colored lights, low-altitude maneuvers over residential neighborhoods. None made a sound, none could be identified, and all shared a chilling consistency. What exactly was seen that night over Eupen? And why did so many credible witnesses, including law enforcement, report the same silent craft? To understand the magnitude of what followed and why it would become one of the most thoroughly investigated UFO events in European history, we have to return to that first patrol car, that still night, and a craft that rewrote the rules of what was possible. In Belgian skies. In the late 1980s, Belgium's Walloon region moved at its own unhurried pace. Far from the political pulse of Brussels, towns like Eupen, Waver, and Liege were marked by quiet routines and tight-knit communities. Days began with the scent of fresh bread from corner bakeries and ended with wood smoke curling from chimneys across the countryside. Life here wasn't glamorous, but it was grounded, predictable, peaceful, and deeply local. Among the people who kept these rhythms steady were local gendarmes, respected officers, who rarely dealt with more than the occasional traffic incident or neighborhood dispute. Two of them, Serge Meeson and Heinrich Nickel, were out on a routine patrol when their lives took a sharp turn. Known for their calm professionalism, neither man had any reason to expect that the uneventful evening would become a national headline. Both were seasoned officers, not men prone to exaggeration or flights of fantasy. But theirs weren't the only eyes scanning the sky. In villages stretching from Eupen to Spa, residents had begun to share quiet, uncertain conversations. Strange lights spotted over rooftops, luminous triangles drifting too low and too slow to be normal aircraft. At first, these murmurs were brushed off, explained away as stars, satellites, or tricks of the atmosphere. But the pattern grew harder to ignore. Some even began jotting down times and shapes, uncertain whether they were chasing a shared illusion or documenting something profoundly real. At local cafes, elderly men with folded newspapers discussed the NATO air corridor that ran nearby, wondering aloud if these sightings were tied to secret exercises. But the lights didn't behave like military planes. They hovered, they shifted shape, they remained utterly silent, and so, beneath the stillness of Belgium's winter skies, something was moving, something that defied logic and would soon drag the country into the heart of a global mystery. What the officers saw next would not just confirm the rumors. It would demand answers no one was prepared to give. The patrol car rolled slowly through the countryside, headlights tracing narrow roads that curved around quiet fields and sleepy homes. Officers Serge Meeson and Heinrich Nickel were nearing the end of a routine night shift when something in the sky caught their attention. At first, it seemed like a distant aircraft, three steady lights forming a triangle, hovering far too low. But as they brought the vehicle to a halt and stepped outside, it became immediately clear. This was no plane. Suspended in the air, barely making a sound, was an enormous triangular object flat, black and massive, with one bright white light at each point and a pulsing red light at the center. The object moved slowly, deliberately, silently. Meeson would later recall how it seemed to glide with unnatural smoothness, as if it were carving a path through the air untouched by wind or resistance. It felt like it was aware of us, he said, like it didn't need to run, it wanted to be seen. They followed it, cautiously, radioing their sighting to dispatch. Over the next hour, the object maintained its low altitude, passing over rooftops and treetops without emitting so much as a hum. Streetlights dimmed in its path. Animals stirred restlessly. Other officers across nearby towns began calling in similar reports, each describing the same triangular formation, the same eerily silent flight. Then, weeks later, came the night that would elevate this incident into international significance. Radar. Stations near Glans and Somersegg picked up unidentified targets moving erratically through Belgian airspace. The objects performed sharp angle turns at speeds exceeding 1,000 kilometers per hour, maneuvers no conventional aircraft could survive. With visual confirmation from gendarmes on the ground and radar locks established, the Belgian Air Force made an unprecedented decision. They scrambled two F-16 fighter jets. Captain Dieter Gerhardt, one of the pilots that night, engaged with the target only to find himself locked in a bizarre aerial chase. Each time he closed in, the target dropped altitude violently, accelerating straight down before vanishing from radar. At one point, it descended from 10,000 to 1,500 feet in seconds, triggering G-forces far beyond what any human pilot could withstand. The cockpit instruments briefly malfunctioned, and just as suddenly, the radar contact vanished entirely. On the ground, civilians in multiple towns looked skyward that night and saw the same thing, a silent triangle, light steady, vanishing into the darkness without a trace. No sonic boom, no crash, just an emptiness that seemed too deliberate to ignore. Witnesses weren't just shaken, they were changed. Some described a lingering sense of unease. Others spoke of electromagnetic disturbances in their homes or nausea that faded as the object moved away. Many remained quiet for years, afraid of ridicule. But for those involved, directly trained pilots, radar technicians, and law enforcement, it was an encounter that challenged everything they knew about the skies above them. And yet, this was only the beginning. What followed would be an unprecedented investigation backed by the Belgian military, involving scientists, skeptics, and intelligence services, all trying to answer one question. What exactly was flying above Belgium that winter, and why did it seem immune to everything we thought we understood? In the weeks following the sightings, Belgium's media exploded with coverage. Newspaper headlines questioned whether the country had become a new hotspot for extraterrestrial activity. Television broadcasts featured interviews with startled witnesses and calm, collected police officers who, unlike in many UFO cases, didn't shy away from speaking publicly. What made this wave different was the credibility of those coming forward. Law enforcement, radar technicians, even fighter pilots. The public was intrigued. The government, unusually, took notice. Belgium's military didn't dismiss the reports. In fact, in a rare move, the Belgian Air Force acknowledged that the objects tracked on radar and observed visually could not be explained by conventional aircraft. A series of detailed flight logs, radar recordings, and communication transcripts were made public, a level of transparency that lent gravity to the mystery. Despite multiple radar locks, infrared camera recordings from the F-16s captured no clear image of the objects. But the data was consistent. Something solid, fast, and maneuverable had been in the sky. Then came the infamous photograph. a grainy but striking image of a dark triangular craft with bright lights at each point, taken by an anonymous individual in the town of Petit-Richain. For years, it was considered one of the most compelling pieces of UFO photographic evidence ever captured. Only in 2011 did a man come forward claiming the image was a hoax, but doubts lingered. Why wait over 2 decades? Why confess only after global interest had faded? Eyewitness reports, though numerous, varied slightly. Some described the triangle as silent and slow-moving. Others claimed it made a low humming noise or changed speed rapidly. These inconsistencies didn't necessarily discredit the sightings. They reflected what often happens during highly unusual, emotionally intense events. Perception falters, memory fragments. Still, skeptics latched onto these variations, arguing they pointed to misidentification or mass suggestion. Several explanations began to circulate. Some experts pointed toward advanced military aircraft tests, possibly involving stealth technology developed by the United States. Yet Belgium was not known to host such programs, and NATO officials denied any exercises in the region. Others suggested rare atmospheric phenomena or optical illusions. Yet the radar data, the trained witnesses, and the aerial maneuvers observed seemed to defy these conventional theories. Ufologists saw something else, a case that mirrored past sightings in the Hudson Valley. New York large, silent triangles reported by dozens over time. To them, this was part of a global pattern, craft that seemed to observe, test, and vanish. But even among UFO researchers, theories diverged. Some spoke of surveillance craft, others of psychological manipulation or technology far beyond human. Dr. Patrick Ferrin of the Belgian Society for the Study of Space Phenomena took a cautious approach. "There's no doubt the sightings were real," he stated. "The problem lies not in proving something was there, but in defining what it was. And that may be something we're not yet prepared to understand." In the end, no physical trace was left behind. No wreckage. No conclusive footage. Just radar logs, personal testimonies, and a growing archive of unanswered questions. For some, that silence was proof of a deeper cover-up. For others, it was simply the end of a chapter that defied classification. But the deeper mystery remains. How could so many credible observers, including those trained to analyze and identify aircraft, all report something so anomalous without a single clear answer? The Belgian skies went quiet again, but the questions never did. Decades later, the Belgian UFO wave still leaves behind more questions than answers. No aircraft was intercepted, no debris recovered, no official agency ever offered a definitive explanation for what radar systems tracked and hundreds of people police, pilots, and ordinary citizens claim to have seen. The photograph that once captivated the world turned out to be a hoax, or so we're told. Yet the radar data, the coordinated visual confirmations, the experienced Air Force pilots locked in a dogfight with an object that simply disappeared, those remain. For many who witnessed the events firsthand, the memory hasn't faded. Some still hesitate to speak about it, not for lack of conviction, but to avoid being dismissed. Others quietly gather in local cafes or late-night broadcasts, still hoping for someone to connect the dots. It's not about believing or disbelieving anymore. It's about confronting a piece of history that doesn't fit neatly into any known category. Could it have been an unknown foreign technology, decades ahead of its time? A rare, perfectly timed atmospheric illusion? Or did something truly unearthly cross into Belgian airspace under the cover of night? Whatever the answer, one truth remains: something flew above Belgium that winter, and no one, not even the government, can tell us what it was. So, what do you believe happened over those quiet towns? Was it misperception or a message we weren't ready to understand? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, And as always, stay curious. Could the Belgian UFO wave have been a glimpse of non-human technology, or were these sightings something closer to home, hidden under layers of secrecy? Share your theory in the comments below.